Hello everyone, Class 8, Subject English, Chapter 3, The Selfish Giant, Book It So Happened. Today we will start our new chapter. So, let's start our chapter. First of all, I give introduction of the chapter. This is the chapter about a selfish giant. Every afternoon, as the children were coming from school, they were used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in springtime broke out into delicate blossom of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. Okay, this is the story of introduction about the selfish giant. This is the story of Oscar Wilde. The Selfish Giant is a beautiful fictitious story by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde is the writer of the story. The story revolves around a play garden which becomes lavish in the presence of children and dries in the absence of children. This story teaches us to treat kids in the right way. Okay, let's start the story. The giant's garden was beautiful and children loved to play in it. The giant, who was selfish, built a high wall around his lovely garden. Children did not enter the garden thereafter, nor did spring and summer till the giant experienced a change of heart. Okay, there is the story about the selfish giant. Before that, children are very happy to play in beautiful garden, but after the returning of selfish giant, he built a high wall round his lovely garden, and nobody enter in his garden. After that, there nor did spring and summer till the giant's garden. So after that, giant experienced a change of heart. It means selfish giant become normal, and at the end of the story he will be changed. Let's start our story and see through the story how the selfish giant changed his heart. Okay, every afternoon as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars. And there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. "How happy we are here!" they cried to each other. One day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre. Cornish ogre means a giant of Cornwall. It is said in UK. Okay, this is also a kind of giant, and had stayed with him for 7 years. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice. Gruff means rough, which is not smooth voice, and the children ran away. Okay, children used to play in the giant's garden every afternoon. They did so while coming from school. It was a large, lovely garden. It had soft grass. There were fruit trees in it. They bore rich fruit. The birds sang sweetly. The children were happy to play in it. One day, the giant came back after 7 years. He had stayed with his friend, the Cornish oak. He saw the children playing in his garden. The children ran away as they saw him. He said that it was his own garden. He would not allow anyone to play there. He built a wall around it. He also put a notice board. It had a warning on it. Okay? My own garden is my own garden, said the giant. Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself. So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board. What is the notice board? He had a warning on it. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Means prohibited. It means nobody can enter in his garden without his permission. As you see in picture, all the children ran away from the garden when the giant returned. Okay, he was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high walls when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant, it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, as there were no children. And the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried. So we will live here all the year round. The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak. Cloak means a long thick covered with its white. And the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them. And he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he rode all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. This is a delightful spot, he said. He must ask Hail on a visit. So the Hail came. Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates. And then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in grey and his breath was like ice. And then the selfish giant did not allow any children to get inside his garden. The spring came, there were blossom and little birds, but it was winter in the giant's garden. The birds didn't sing as there were no children. Once a beautiful flower came out of the grass, but it saw the notice board. It went back to sleep. In the giant's garden, there were the snow and the frost. Everything in it looked white. Then came the north wind. it stayed with them. The hail also came. Okay, the selfish giant looked at the cold and white garden. As you see in this passage, the conclusion is that nobody can enter in the selfish giant's garden, so the spring also did not come in his garden. So there was only snow and frost, and also south wind come here, and he invited the hail also there. I can't understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold white garden. I hope there will be change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. He is too selfish, she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind, and the hail, and the frost, and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window. Linnet means a brownish songbird found in Europe. That bird found in Europe. But it was so long since he had heard a bird singing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. The selfish giant looked at the cold and white garden. The spring didn't come to his garden. There were golden fruit in the autumn, but it didn't come to his garden. The winter, the north wind, the hail, the frost, the snow danced there. One morning, the giant heard some lovely music. It was very sweet. He thought that it must be the king's musicians. But it was a linnet. She was singing outside his window. The giant found its song very sweet. Then the hail stopped dancing. The north wind stopped. The giant felt that the spring had come. In this video, we are doing only first part of the story. I hope you understand. Thank you.